Freedom seems to have so many different layers and aspects to it. And I'm looking forward to discussing the topic of freedom with you and understanding the higher dimensional perspective on the issues that we find ourselves in related to this aspect of life on Earth. We often experience a feeling of being trapped in the physical body, in our relationships, families, friendship groups, social systems, or even our emotional patterns. And I'm wondering if you could describe freedom to us in your words.
Well, freedom is an aspect of being human. What is important to understand is that freedom in its totality, in the context of everything, is simply something that exists. And the question, of course, is whether you, as a human being, in your contracted nature of being a human being, can connect and expand and incorporate what is the quality of freedom. Of course, when you look out into the world, you can see many things that would indicate that freedom is not present. But of course, you are looking out. Freedom itself, when you understand the nature and the quality of it, does come from within, but is also outside of you. And the question that you have to ask yourself is how attached you are to the outcome of something. Because freedom itself is the ability for you to look at any situation that you find yourself in and say, am I attached to the outcome of it? Am I attached to what it is? Am I attached to the impact of it on the life that I am desiring? When you come to an understanding that you are not connected in that way, that you can say yes or no, and you are not attached to the judgment of anybody as to how you participate in that, what is important is that you then feel freedom arise, because freedom is allowing the free flow of energy that you are, allowing anything to occur in the way that it will occur, for you to observe it, for you to be able to incorporate it in your life or not incorporate it in your life, depending on how it is you are designing the life that you wish to lead. So freedom is something that is present always. It does not go away, it does not come and go, it is there always, and you translate it, freedom, as choice. That is what freedom is. Your ability as a human being or an individual person to choose whether or not you participate or don't participate.
So from what you have just said, it seems that the biggest impact on our freedom is the ability to remain the observer, but to understand the consequences from the actions that we take and make a decision accordingly.
Well, it is not necessary that you have to plan and to understand what the consequences are, because then you are not in the present moment. Freedom does not exist in the future, and it does not exist in the past. It is where you currently are. It is where you find yourself when you are using all of your 5 sensory abilities, plus that which is the observational role of where you are in the world in relation to anything that is going on. But it is the present moment. It is the present moment when you can consciously, through your awareness, take that choice. You do not need to understand what the future holds. You do not need to bring what is the past into the present moment to calculate the probability of something happening. Look at the energy that you are in that present moment, whether you are drawn to it or whether you are not drawn to it. That is what most human beings do. That is what you tend to do, is to plan the future and hope that that future that you have planned will come into the present moment in the way, in the feeling and the quality of what you have planned. But freedom exists in the present moment, in what is happening in the world when you are observing purely.
And what about when we are in situations where we are feeling controlled, perhaps in a relationship, for example, and we want a different outcome? We want in that present moment to follow our heart and be free, and yet there is a knowing in that present moment of the consequences.
Well, what you need to do is ask yourself, what are the consequences at that particular moment in time? Of course you can project into the future as to what may occur in terms of relationships that you have with other people if you take a particular course of action in the present moment. So for instance, if it is a relationship that you are desiring to leave because you feel you are controlled, or you are the subject of violence and abuse, or whatever it is that is causing the arising of the emotions of the desire to leave, then if you can, then you can disconnect from that which is the consequences, because the consequences are something that you have no control over. You only have control of the present moment and the way that your conscious awareness arises. So if you, not what others may think, not any connections that you have with other outcomes, how it may impact, this is your life. This is the life that you are choosing to attract as an energy. So what is important is that in the present moment where you stand, if you stand still and look and center yourself from the heart, whether you wish to be in the situation that you find yourself in. And if the answer is no, then you can decide to walk away in that present moment, regardless of what anyone else says, feels, or do. But what we, of course, understand is that there are responsibilities that some humans have, whether you are a mother of children, or whether you have responsibilities for a grandparent in terms of the nature of their health, or whatever it is. But all of this is coming into the present moment and causes the yes or the no energy to arise. Of course, there are consequences from that present moment. If you do walk away, then you know that someone will perhaps need to be looking after your children, or you have to take your children with you. Or you have to, in terms of the nature of your social structure, call someone else in to look after the grandparent. And that is what you call planning. But in terms of freedom, the freedom arises in the present moment.
So what I'm also understanding is that often it's not the other person that is controlling us and preventing us from freedom. It's actually our fear that is restricting our level of freedom.
Well, that is one of the most important things to remember, is that no one does control you. In terms of the control that you sense, it is the limitation that you arrive at, in terms of how far you can go on a particular course, in terms of the energy that you are. And when fear arises, that is your boundary. And the question that arises is, beyond the boundary is freedom. But the boundary itself creates and causes that feeling that you are not free to do that which you desire.
So a person really needs to address their own level of fear in order to create a new sense of freedom within any situation.
Well, the reality, as we have said, is that freedom is around all the time. It is the arising of the emotion of fear that causes you to believe, from the extent of your ego and the way that you are in the world, that you are not free to do as you desire. But the reality is that you are free to do anything that you desire, and it is the moral code, or it is the conditioning that you have created as your way of being, that creates the boundaries. And beyond that boundary, because there is uncertainty, that stops you from crossing the boundary.
Yes. So it's almost as though we put ourselves in our own prisons by not being willing to pay the price for not adhering to the rules of society or the people around us. So therefore, we're all being part of our own prisons.
Well, it depends what you believe is a prison. So a prison can be that of a structure, can be society's rules that have been created not by one person. Of course, it comes through in the nature of one person putting a rule in writing, but it does not exist until people sign up to it and say, yes, we will adhere to that as a rule. So what is a prison? If you, whatever anybody has written as a rule, if you do not adhere to that rule, then you are not caught up within the nature of it as an energy, and so therefore you are free.
People seem to like to be part of the herd, and they like the feelings of security and familiarity, and in that way they remain part of a society structure.
Well, what is important is that freedom is always present. Does not matter what you see as an individual person when you look out. You may see people that are caught up in the nature of having to work from your 9 to 5 in terms of time. And that looks as if it's not freedom. But when there is conscious awareness that it has a place, it has a purpose, that whoever is participating in the framework of going to work from 9 to 5, but are consciously aware as to why they are doing that, and they freely sign up to the nature of that as their way of being, then freedom is there. It is all about being consciously aware of what you are doing at the moment that you are doing it.
And what you really desire.
What is important also is ego itself is a mechanism. It is a mechanism that, as you know, is designed to maintain the physical body.
Yes.
So what occurs is that the ego designs and signs up to various different ways of being in the world, different strategies and different social structures, because it aids ego's ability to assist the body in surviving.
And we're so often controlled by what our neighbours, our colleagues, our family members think of us. And so true freedom seems to be a state where we are not worried at all about what other people think of us.
Well, that is a matter in terms of being worried about what people think about you, is how does that impact the nature of your ego's ability to maintain the physical body? And if you are of the view that it does not matter what your neighbours think of you, but you are in your own wholesome self from the whole perspective, and that you are highly conscious of the nature of your decision-making process, and there is a marriage that is going on between you, the observer, and you, the ego, because you are all part of the same aspect, when there is balance there, then freedom again shows itself, even though it is always present. It is how it shows itself in terms of the clarity and understanding of each person, understanding that what they have created as their life is what they have created, not what someone else has created for them.
Yes, because if we look at what other people think of us, we could have a study of 10 people, what 10 people's different opinions of us would probably be all different. So why would we really want to buy into what they think?
So what is the most important opinion?
Our own.
Are your own opinion of yourself.
Yes. So much easier to be free and to truly create the life that we desire for ourselves when we acknowledge, respect and love ourselves and our own opinions.
That is true.
So the importance really is for people to start to observe how they're restricting themselves and their own levels of freedom and what they truly desire for themselves and what it means for each individual person to have their own sense of freedom.
It's also their own sense of self, and the sense of self really comes into focus when they understand what it is that they desire. It is that old question for all human beings: what is it that I desire as a human being, as a person free flowing in the world? Because without answering that question, then you become more subject to the nature of what other people desire of you rather than what you desire of life.
And what do you think society would look like if everyone was able to have their own sense of freedom?
Well, you would see everyone with a smile on their face to start with. But what it implies is that with everybody doing what they desire to do, and in terms of the nature of the love that will come from their heart and their passion for what they are doing, then you will see a different world emerge, because the world that is currently in place is there because of the social structure that has been created by all human beings that have signed up to that as the social structure that they are part of. If you change on the inside, if that is how you wish to see it, the way that you desire to be in the world, then you change, other people see that you change, your energy changes, you change their energy, and then it begins to spread, and so the social structure changes. And that is what is happening. It is important to understand that as you change, everything changes, not just you.
And what do you think would happen in family groups, for example?
Well, what would happen is that there would be a lot more clarity and a lot more truth that is told in terms of the nature of how each member of the family participates in that group dynamic structure. Because families tend, the individuals within families tend to play a part or a role that family needs to function. But what happens is that they get caught up in the nature of that role and cannot get out of it because it is being demanded of them by the other members of that family. But when they come into the nature of themselves, understand the role that they take, then they can remove themselves or alter their energy such that it then becomes different in terms of the energy of the family as a whole.
So what happens when someone feels that they are duty bound to do something for another within a family, and if they withdraw that aspect of the relationship, someone else may be left?
Well, then you are back to consequences, and your attempt to understand what the consequences are of you withdrawing that or withdrawing from that role that you play for that person. What we would say is that it's important that you do not get too caught up in the nature of any responsibility that you have for someone else's emotional stability. Look after yourself, love yourself first. That is the message that is important for you to understand. And once you begin to love yourself, and you are able to say, in a compassionate way, of course, that you do not wish to fulfill the role that you have looked inside and that you have identified, that you are in a position of not desiring to fulfill a role for a particular person, then it is, you can leave it for them to react in the way that they react. And of course, some may react angrily, some may begin to understand the nature that you are a free individual, that you can do what you want. Some may also see that they have a responsibility to take care of themselves.
This sounds like it could trigger quite a lot of different emotions, ranging from guilt and anger. What do you see as being the positive outcome from a situation like that?
Well, in terms of the positive outcome from an energetic perspective, which is the way that we would look at it, is that how does the energy flow? Does it flow unrestricted, or is it caught up in the nature of different unresolved issues within the nature of the family itself? What is important to understand is that from a vibrational perspective, the world is raising its vibrational frequency, and it will only do that when everyone is living from their heart. And the heart energy is about free-flowing energy. It is not about being stuck. It is about being consciously aware of those aspects of your life that do not work for you, that you are not beholden to uphold for other people, but you look inside yourself for the freedom that emerges, for the freedom that you are. You need to let that go, and what will emerge is a free-flowing way of living.
So if you were to withdraw your, say, emotional or physical support for a family member because it's not serving you, and you are, perhaps a person would be becoming depressed, duty bound, but they look in their heart, they sense their own self-love, and they withdraw that service. Is it that someone else will step in? Because almost I know that the universe often fills any void that's created.
That is the case. There is no vacuum. What will happen is that as you step out, something else will step in. A door will close, you will close the door, someone else will open that door, when you have to trust the nature of that. Of course, if you do not necessarily trust the nature of that, you can plan, as you like to do, the step-by-step exit strategy that you wish to take, so that there is a minimum or minimal impact on the person that you are withdrawing from. And that is perhaps a more compassionate way.
Yes.
But there is no judgment in terms of the universe as to whether you do it instantaneously or whether you do it in a planned way. It's a matter for you and your life as to how quickly you wish to sense freedom arising within.
Ultimately, though, it could be beneficial for all concerned.
Well, if it is something that you require or desire the longevity of the relationship to remain healthy, such that there is no rejection or there is no feeling of abandonment in terms of the fulfillment of the role that you played with that other person, then you can plan it. But it does not always happen in terms of the nature of how you plan it. You may plan part of it, but the other person, of course, will then react to the nature of the changing energy and will perhaps question the nature of the truth, or may question the nature of your desire to be and help them.
It seems to me, though, that if as all humans, we live in integrity, honouring ourselves and loving ourselves, the best outcome for humanity will be reached. As you speak about often, the raising of an individual vibrational frequency has an impact on the totality of humanity and the planet. So you may be temporarily letting one person down, but ultimately you're serving the greater good.
Well, you are serving the greater good because you are an inextricable part of the greater good. And as your vibrational frequency rises because of the actions that you have taken to remove yourself from what is perhaps a perceived prison that you have found yourself caught up in, then humanity is impacted by your decisioning process. Of course, as the energy of humanity changes, then the social structure of humanity also changes, and there is from within a freedom that arises as the vibrational frequency of you and humanity changes.
Thank you. I think it would be worth us exploring, perhaps in the next audio, the impact of speaking our truth.
Freedom is a big subject.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.